Call this meeting to order. Mr. Frazier will not be with us, so please be patient. We're going to begin with calling this meeting to order and the invocation, the pledge, and then we'll go straight into closed session. Please.
You got a phone call. Almighty God, allow us to collectively bring reflection and wisdom to our meeting. May we use our expertise and our judgment to contribute to the well-being of our students and the families that we serve. May we be listeners more than speakers, and may we always have in mind your will for the future of our district. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Janet. Okay. As permitted by sections 551.001-551.146 of the Texas Government Code and pursuant to section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code, we will now go into closed session. Okay. Call this meeting back to order at, is that right? 12:02? Yeah. It's close enough. Yeah, 12:02. How about that? Okay, and we're going to go to item 7, since we did item 6. Convene an open session, take appropriate action on items discussed in closed session. Need a motion?
I move.
Second.
There's a motion that we move and a second on items discussed in closed session in regards to personnel and property. Any discussion? No. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, now we're going to number 3, which is now 5. Is everybody confused yet? Items of information. We'll begin with elementary, middle, and high school start and end time. Dr. Baum?
Yes, sir. We have a couple of items that we believe have come to the board, either through way of the committee with questions or other meetings through the public information. So we'd like to bring some of those items and be able to provide information to the board and to our committee and to our school district and have that conversation. We're not coming with any requests or recommendations other than just giving you information about these programs. We will start with the school start and end time because it has a lot more to do with just the start of school and end of school. So Mr. Rivera, again, working with Dr. McAndrew, put together a presentation. We'd like to give that information to you. We may have to turn the lights off so they can real light back there. All right, you do have this copy. You actually have 2, so I have 2 presentations. We'll start with the school day. Things to remember regarding the school day. The state requires now 75,600 minutes, which is equivalent to 177 school days that are 7 hours long, which is 420 minutes. Currently, our district, we do a 7.5-hour day, which is 450 minutes per day. The state does allow districts to do a waiver of 3 days. So most districts are at 177, and we'll get to that when I go to the next slide. Also, our district has a 3-tier transportation to keep in mind. We have our middle school first, then elementary and high school. This allows all of our buses to get to every location on time. And then our current schedules at our campuses allow for intervention during the school day as opposed to the after-school hours as we go through. So our current elementary, their typical schedule, it varies what time of the day they have these, but they all have 45 minutes of social studies, 45 minutes of science. Their lunch with recess is another 45 minutes. Everyone has 90 minutes of math, 90 minutes of reading. Their rotation or specials for the day is 45 minutes.
and then they have a RTI session in the morning and one in the afternoon. This is also for acceleration for those students that are on the acceleration part. But this is how their 450 minutes are used at our current elementary campuses. And this is our comparison to all of our surrounding area school districts, where we're on top with a start time of 8:10 to end time of 3:40, which is the 450 minutes with 174 school days. With the extra minutes we have, that allows us to have less school days than our partners to the north. Almost all districts that are south of Highway 90 or I-10 have a longer school day. Those above, which is north side, northeast, Cibolo, have the state minimum of 420 minutes roughly. There's give and take there, but elementary is where there's the most variance. When we get to secondary, you see everyone's coming closer to us. But we do have elementary in the middle of our tiers. They used to be an early start. All the other districts, elementary start first, where ours is the middle, which allows our middle school kids to go to school or be the first to get picked up in the dark, but also be home when the siblings come home from elementary. So that's why there's a variance in the start time, is because we have ours in the middle as opposed to the other districts. They're the first group of students to go to school.
But all said and done, every district goes to school the same amount of minutes.
Not necessarily. We go more. We go currently 78,000 minutes, which gives us extra minutes in case we had bad weather. We would never have to make up a school day because of our extra minutes.
Wow.
Wherein Northside has the bare minimum. If they have to have a bad weather, their kids are having to come to school to make up that, unless the state gives the whole state a waiver for making up that day.
So this is the flexibility and instructional time that was allotted in 15, or 17, 15 or 13. And this allows school districts to build in additional minutes, therefore you don't have to do a waiver if you do have that kind of ice day that you can continue going on the schedule as planned. It also provides you an opportunity to create additional time if you want to do responsive intervention programs, if you want to do IE opportunities for students. If you want to create additional elective opportunity, which I think Jason will get to in a minute, the middle school, our school day allows our students to take up to 3 different electives to get a well-rounded education. For those students who have to go through some remedial type experience, it allows them to at least have 2 different electives. So everyone gets an elective plus at the secondary level. And so I think when you look at this, I think one of the concerns that the board heard in the past was the length of instruction at elementary schools. So we're trying to bring you as an example of other people's day. I think if you look at this, we are within the group of 4 who probably have the longest elementary day. I believe there's one district longer than us, and there's 2 others that are just like us in instruction day. So to answer the question, it is a little bit longer. It's not pronounced longer day, but that longer day allows us to do some things with our students in the form of acceleration, remediation, different types of opportunities.
But that's the way the elementary rolls out. When we look at middle school, our middle school setup, all the kids have 7 periods, which allow their 4 core subjects plus the 3 electives. If they have remedial, they still have the 2 electives. On a traditional day, they're 56 minutes long, but most of them are doing a response to intervention in the morning, so that knocks the class periods down to 52 minutes. So they have 7 classes of 52 minutes with a 30-minute lunch. Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember when those ladies came and talked to us about, do you remember what their beef was?
Their beef was, like I said, we moved elementary to the middle tier, so their biggest complaint was they get out so late. Well, one of the reasons they got out later to the north side is because they're the second tier as opposed to north side, they're the first tier. So if you go back and look at north side's release time at elementary is much earlier than us, but that's 2 folds. It's because they are the first to go to school north side, and they only go the 420 minutes. On us, we're in the middle tier, so, and like I said, the one reason we did that is so those young kids aren't in the dark getting picked up by buses, is why we made that shift in the past. So there's 2 reasons why we go to 340. It's not just the longer instructional day, it's also that we moved them up to the second tier as opposed to the first tier.
Okay.
And when you say most schools are using the intervention time, so you're saying 3 of our middle schools are on the second?
No, I would say all 4 are doing, it just depends on the number of days they do. Because when they do the intervention, they're actually going to classes at 7:15 as opposed to the 7:30 time, to get the kids more time. And most of them, all their kids are already arrived at that time. Our buses do such a great job. All the kids are delivered to the campuses, but where when they do the intervention, they can start at 7:15 as opposed to 7:30. So on the intervention days, they have roughly 35, 36 minutes in that intervention, and then a passing period and announcements, and then they're back on track with a 52-minute.
But don't they allow the kids to eat breakfast when they get there?
Yes, ma'am. Cafeteria services start serving breakfast as soon as they can. Buses get early. Most of our kids are eating breakfast when they're delivered by the buses, and most of those kids are already served plenty of time.
In addition to that, in the past, we've dealt with concerns of elementary students riding the bus with secondary students. Allow elementary students to have their own mode of transportation because that's their tier as well. So it's an additional kind of safety mechanism that I'm concerned with the community impact.
So when looking at the other districts regarding middle school, most of them are adding extra minutes. There's not such a big separation as there was in the elementary. Northside added another 5 minutes, which is 4:30 compared to our 4:50. So it's a little more condensed, but as you see, 7:30 start time, we're the earliest around, and like I said, because we have the middle school going first as opposed to the elementary. And then
That's right.
regarding the high school, they're traditionally the 8 periods with 1 period being lunch, I do believe, and they're all equal times across the board, whether lunch or regular class period. Currently, they don't have the RTI built into the program, but there's discussion to do that. But here's where you see most of our minutes really get more concise. Is high school, most high schools are going a longer day than their elementary and middle school, which they're all getting closer to us with the 450 minutes per day. Start and end times kind of probably closer than any of the other two because everyone has their high school kids going late, as opposed to our difference with elementary and middle school. But again, it's anybody that's below the Highway 90, all of our instructional days are much longer than those districts to the north.
Board members, any questions?
So even with the high school going at 4:50, it allows the weather day as well?
Yes, ma'am, because that's still 7.5-hour days as opposed to the state's minimum of 7-hour days.
I believe it would cover up to 2 weather days.
No, we actually, even going 174 days, we still have enough minutes to cover 5.5 more school days if necessary. Without going on and plus not going on where we have to mark bad weather days on the calendar, we wouldn't use those days either. State still requires us to make those notations on the calendar.
So that's when the state moved away from days of school to
Yeah, flexibility.
My next favorite thing to talk about is our substitutes, looking at it every day. Just to show you an example of what I look at every day. Traditionally, when I get here, this is what I log into, and you can see the top line, which is today, the 10th. It says that we're 88% covered on all of our jobs posted across the district. When I left here yesterday at 4:30, we were 97% covered. So what happens through the transition of nighttime, we have those extra jobs that get put in. If you look at the rest of the week, we're at 100%. So one thing to keep in mind, jobs that are posted early and planned out, whether it's the campus needs or by the staff member, subs cover them. It's what happens overnight as we go through the rest of the slide presentation.
Jason,
Yes, ma'am.
are all of the campuses posting on the online sub thing? Because it seems like they don't. Because sometimes we'll go on there for Stevie and there'll be no openings.
But you gotta, somehow they have a preference of, I want to go to these campuses. That's all you'll see, unless they are open all wide, and then they'll see all 17 campuses. So depending on the preference of the sub is what they have access to. So he may not have access to all of them. If he does, I
And
may not have to change
can
it.
schools say, we don't want this sub, and then it
Yes,
won't
ma'am.
show up? Oh, maybe that's why.
But no.
Maybe they saw the name and they're like, okay.
Not to my knowledge, he hasn't
I
been
mean, he
removed.
subs at McAuliffe a lot. They must like him there.
Not all openings or vacancies are actually posted either.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, they're just not always
They're just
posted.
not, because I know that we have talked about having, how many things we have open and that are not, you know, we don't have subs in there, and so I'm thinking they just must not post all of them.
December and January has been much better for us. Actually, coming back from January, we're, as you'll see when I get to January, we're 90%, 97% covered on all jobs
Okay.
since we've come back.
I've also heard that in some schools that secretaries are like gatekeepers and they don't post the jobs. They decide that, you know, that they fill the positions with desired substitutes.
There is some campuses that have the regular campuses, regular people that come to the campus and kind of have preference over that. The campus can have a preferred list.
But then sometimes they run into trouble because if they're, the desired substitutes, the ones that they like to have, if they're not as available or they've already taken jobs, sometimes at the last minute, they can't fill the position.
Sometimes hurt themselves
Yes.
by doing that.
Yeah.
Resnick was a struggle in the beginning just because all of our subs haven't been to Resnick, but now they have a bigger sub pool, more subs going to it. We might have the same thing with Legacy is starting off, that we still have those that are dedicated to the high school before they transition over, but we'll try to get as many subs in as we can. But what I've done so far is just broken it down by month and separated out based on teachers and our aide positions. Where kids are impacted. In the month of September, numbers are numbers, but teacher-wise, we covered every job 88% of the time. The bottom number there is the unfilled number, the 182. Of those 182, 110 of them were posted that morning. So again, that's been our struggle, is those that are posted in the morning, our system's not able to call out.
Right.
But also, our subs like to have some structure, know what their day is, and want to pick up the jobs the day before, so their day is laid out. When we're posting a job at 7 o'clock in the morning, subs aren't sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. They kind of have it planned out. So we're trying to work on this. We communicate with their staff, put it in as early as possible. But most of the time, it's like probably a 70% chance a job posted overnight in the late hours or early morning is not going to get picked up. So we have some suggestions on what we can do on covering those when we get to it.
Well, and I've brought this up several times. I think that if we would even just increase pay like $10, it would make a difference for aides and special ed.
We're going to get to, we're
Okay.
going to get to
Oh,
it.
okay.
But when it comes to aides, they are paid less, and so our coverage of filling all of those jobs are less because they can go and cover the teacher and get paid more. It's just separated out that way, and we'll bring some suggestions to that. But if you look at their jobs, 65 that were unfilled, they have a higher percent that are calling in the morning of, which is also contributing to them not getting covered. October is the same thing, but keep in mind in October, I think we had 2 Laredo trips, which impacted the high school. I mean, we're talking about high school needing 40 to 50 subs when we went to Laredo. So it does have an impact in the month of October and November. Still 83% coverage. I mean, I'd like it to be better, but again, majority of those days were posted the morning of. November, 85%. AIDS is still down low. December did pick up a little bit better, but still noting most of the ones not filled are coming from posting the day of. And then here we are in January, the first 2 weeks of January. We're 96% covered on the teacher part and still on the AIDS, a lower percent.
You also had half the absences.
Yeah, so far it's only 2 weeks,
Yeah.
but January's a long month, so those numbers will creep up.
Okay.
So just to remind you, our current pay rate, this has been the same since 2004. We haven't really touched it. It's hard for me to come to the board and say, increase their pay when our current $85 a day for degreed is what Northside pays certified subs. And then our certified, we're paying $105. So we're going to bring some changes and suggestions for next year. But in the meantime, what we're suggesting, we know there's a special ed issue of covering those classes. So working with Mr. Robinson, we've already identified some subs that we can bring in and provide a 2-day training to them, which is our SAMA, which is our restraint training. So they have a little bit more knowledge of going into the classroom. Tentative plan is to bring them in the 30th and 31st of this month. Once we do train them, we will have them report to central office, and they won't be picking up jobs on ASOP. We will be assigning them the morning of. So this is a way that me and Rob are trying to think of about two for teaching and 3 for aides. We'll start with 5. So each morning we'll have these 5 people that we will assign them. There's not a huge impact to the budget because they're going to a campus to cover an unfilled job, which that campus had to pay for already. But what we are suggesting, and I'll have to bring it to the board for action, is different pay for these special ed positions. So we would raise the aid for this pilot group to $75 a day because they received the training. And then looking at covering the special ed teacher, changing that rate. If you were non-degreed, it's $65 a day. We'll change it to $75, which is a $10 difference. The degreed is $85. It's a $5 difference there. And then certified, it's $105, but we'll change it to $110. So this is our pilot group that we would start in February. Once we get them trained, we'll have to work the kinks out because we'll have to work with Brandon and payroll to make sure these people are paid the correct way. But this is the first step that we're going to look at doing in February.
Jason, do we want to consider a difference between elementary, junior high, and high school teachers? Just because it's a lot for a sub to go into like the junior high special ed versus elementary.
We can consider everything, but right now payroll is having to go, it's not an automatic rollover, pay them out what they're working. They're having to each pay period go through one by one, and the more that we put on there is going to become more difficult for them to keep the pay straight. I'm open to that idea, but across the board, the person I talked to at Alamo Heights, they went the direction of no matter what you do, who you cover, it's $90 a day. Where we're trying to honor those that have the degree and have the specialty to pay them more, we can provide the extra training and have some separation, but the more complicated we get, it's going to be harder, and payroll's there's going to be mistakes and errors and people getting mad. We can try it. I'm not saying not to.
This is being piloted for the next semester, and then we're going to work out the kinks and figure out whatever we do for next year.
Right, and there's some other suggestions I have when we get to the next page of some ideas of what maybe we can try for next year.
And and you're saying,
Yes, okay.
That's right there.
Why did
Okay.
you say you wouldn't change the degree one?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
It is here. Normally a degreed 4A teacher is 85. We're just raising it $5 to 90 for that special ed teacher.
It doesn't say that you're gonna raise it on.
oh, yeah, it's right there,
Yes.
right there.
Which one? No, that's for the entire pay structure. This is just for the pilot to try to work on the special ed piece. This is strictly for special ed. Now, when we get to the next side of possible change for next year, this is for the entire group, no matter what they're doing. We can change the 85. It's just we're very competitive across the board with what we pay with 85. We can consider going to 90. When we change these rates, it also makes us pay out more when people do retire, which is another caveat that we'll get to in a second. But anything we change here is the daily rate we would pay people their unused leave when they retire. So any change, it's a double whammy on how we impact the budget and go through things.
I have a recommendation that to the board early summer, but it will allow us to extrapolate comparison data from surrounding school districts so we can see how they compare to other districts. But this would not be an immediate thing next week.
Yeah.
That will be the pilot program.
This is just,
Could I ask, I didn't quite get that. You said the increase will increase the overall cost
yes, sir.
because, why?
Most of our subs right now fit in the non-degreed sub position. So we're looking at a $10 a day difference for every sub. So we multiply that out. If there's 1,500 subs for that month, times 10 if we make the change. So that's,
Those times 10 plus the burden on top of the 10 payroll taxes, correct?
So we're considering changing it on everybody. I thought it was just special ed.
the reason I say everybody is because we haven't changed any pay
Yeah.
structure. 13 years ago, these rates were
No, I agree.
very competitive.
It's just,
We have been, of course, the past 5 years, been having more unfilled jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other part of my question is you said something about that would increase their Texas retirement
When-
fund. So,
One of the pluses in our district, if you work for us more than 5 years and you retire from us, we'll buy your unused leave at the sub rate. So say a clerk that worked here
see.
30
So you're paying-
years,
I got you.
they can sell their leave back at that sub rate. And if
So you
we
pay that plus that's more money goes into Texas retirement. Now, if you're here for 5 years as a board member, do you get an increase?
They're gonna put 100% of your pay in.
I think Jason, what he's trying to say is that we probably need to bring you budget numbers to see what we're paying for.
Yeah, I understand.
And then also the allotment that we set aside in the budget for when somebody retires, how we pay out their leave.
Yeah.
Because this number will affect both of those numbers.
Yeah.
It could be,
You know,
Makes
I'd be
sense.
interested in seeing is an incentive of some type of buying back some of those days annually.
it's
If
in
it
here.
saves us money by keeping teachers here more and not using subs as much.
And that's coming up on the next slide.
oh, okay.
Well,
Ooh, y'all thought of everything.
one last comment, and this, of course, comes from the kid at home, who, when you ask them, well, how'd it go today? Well, what'd you do? Nothing. Why? We had a substitute. Now, we all know that that happens, and that's the point you're working at there. The point I want to make, though, is that this substitute thing is very, very, very important. And we really ought to address this in some creative way. But I don't know that we have to be just competitive on substitutes. I mean, we're already a little bit more on teachers, but it seems like to me that substitutes are so important that I personally would not get hung up on what's competitive, what Northside does. I'd like to be able to take them away from Northside,
Right.
maybe get better teachers in, and maybe they'll do
And we do that. We have subs that work with us and Northside, and they do end up working more days with Southwest because we pay more. We try to get them out, as many people as we can in here, but most of our sub pool is comprised of the non-degreed, our local community members that want to be there, and they're always asking me for raise, and I think it's time that we do it since 13 years, and when we originally did it 13 years ago, that was far and above what anybody around us was paying. So it's one of the things, this is one suggestion, just for your knowledge, to get feedback from you of what we bring to you. The other possibilities we have, there's several here. We do the pilot program with special ed, but we also can go ahead and think about maybe a full-time subs, a pool of full-time subs, which means we take the daily rate, times them by 174 school days, but also pay them benefits. And they would be designated to show up here every day and go cover the unfilled job.
They become employees.
They'll be full-time employees, but they don't know where they're going each day, so providing the benefits in that could be a possibility. That's just an option. Number two is just continue, like Dr. Byram says, the importance of that person in the body, you really can't put a dollar value on it of what you lose with kids when that teacher's out. So that's where number three comes in, of paying unused local leave to employees at the end of the school year. Going into the summer, you would think that most of our employees would like additional money, but it does have a fiscal impact to the district. Most teachers will say, well, my day's worth more than that sub rate. The idea here will be to look at the dollar amount that we're willing to pay for that unused leave.
Yeah. 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 Time is very valuable to them.
The way our policy is currently written, when a teacher is absent, we take their local leave first. and state left. One of the benefits is that if someone left us, they have all their state days to carry over to the next district. So whatever local leave they have is what they haven't used the entire year, because we cannot pay the state leave. They have to accrue that. But we're looking at a teacher gets 5 state days, 5 local days. At the end of the year, if they didn't use any local days, is buying those 5 days back at a certain price. And we'd have to really look at the budget of what we're willing to pay for that.
And that would be strictly voluntary?
They can ask, yes. Well,
Our objective today is provide information to the board about
Sure.
the whole substitute pool. And I think to commend Jason for bringing a lot of data together and understanding this big arena as well as he does. So our objective today is really to introduce the pilot program that we're going to kick off. So it'll be an action item next week. These are all items up here that are under consideration because as we look at our data, it tells us that we have an issue in half-day subs, especially in the fall when we have 20 coaches who leave half-day. It creates an issue. So it would behoove us to have a half-day program to really market that we're looking for half-day folks who can work either most of the PMs or some of the weekends. But then exploring these other things, being creative, and Dr. Byram and Mr. Russ has been a great point. The rule of thumb, when a teacher's out of the classroom, it takes 3 days to get those students back to the same level as if that teacher was in there that day. Whatever we do and whatever we bring in the form of recommendations before we start next school year needs to be to increase and move the needle in keeping our teachers in the classroom by incentivizing them to come to the classroom as opposed to giving them the reason not to because there's no value in doing that. So we do that through incentivizing programs. If we do have to have a sub, it should be that we're looking for the best of the San Antonio students. Because you can live anywhere in San Antonio and come work here for the day. So if we create that program that encourages and motivates folks, i.e. folks who retired from the system, to come into Southwest as opposed to any other place, we get our kids a better service. And so this is, today's planting the seed is kind of rolling out the pilot program, but this is nowhere near over. Because there's some other issues that we have heard from communities just before that need to do more investigation, data collection, bring it back here in May, June, and July, preparation for them to leave the school year.
yeah, the last thing on there that we didn't know, Dr. Burstuff mentioned the half-day sub-pool, but also us looking more into the vacation for 226. We do have a lot of people, our current policy is use it or lose it mentality, and bringing back some more data on exploring what we can do on that policy.
And a lot of folks disappear at the end of July when we leave them note, because they're fixing to leave for 10 days.
Oh.
Because they just never were able to take that time along the way. And so that same incentivizing for teachers, we want to recognize for our 226 folks who are getting the same opportunity. We used to have that. So it's about half and half when you look at the policies. Some districts do that, some districts choose to use our legal policies. We'll bring the data, give it to you, to our board, and get some direction, and go back and come back with some recommendations.
Any questions?
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Item C, energy conservation update. Brandon, Thomas.
Mr. Chris wants to preface this, but this is kind of an ongoing collaboration that we've been having with some folks who've been in our district, looking at some conservation opportunities. When we're going, I'll just turn it over to Mr. Chris.
Well, we have Mike Reese here with his team from ABM. The last time they were in front of the board, they showed you the high school, some of the things that they can, possibilities that can happen in the high school as far as through this energy conservation program. They've come back, they've looked at the rest of the district, they're ready to present that to the board and show you an overall, basically the overall picture of what it looks like. They're also coming with options, so that the board can take a look at and see where they feel is something that, if the district decided to go down this road, what option would best fit us. And so they're here just for an informational. We still have some things that we're doing on our side that to look into and making a recommendation. And so today is more informational, just getting an overall picture and then possible options. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mike.
Thank you very much. All righty. Okay. I have a backup career in IT, so Thank you for your time today. I have Mike Gleddy presenting with me. We were here presenting to you guys specifically on, as Mr. Chris said, the high school portion. So the high school was made a priority because of the bond renovations that were going on in kind of a parallel track. So when we looked at this, he said, let's make the high school the #1 priority. Let's get all the IGA done for that, get pricing and quotes, and that's kind of what we talked about last time. I have a slide or two to kind of recap that because that was probably a month ago, but a majority of what we're talking about today is twofold. One is the balance of the districts. What are we doing? What does the total program look like? What kind of savings can we generate? Those type of things. And at the end of this, we're going to give you 3 kind of options, what we called option A, B, and C. We're very creative, as you can tell, A, B, and C. So what that does is shows the effect of using either bond or general fund for the high school specifically. And as we discussed this with the administration, we said, well, let's give them 3 options. One is fully fund the high school, the $8.1 million that we talked about last time, utilizing either the bond dollars you have appropriated or general fund. Option 2 would be, well, we'd like to save some of those dollars and do other things with it. Maybe we only contribute $4 million of that. And the last one is, if we don't contribute anything for the high school and use only the savings to pay for everything, what does that affect, right? Because as you shrink that, it has effect on the number of energy conservation measures you can do. And that has effects on the savings you can drive. So it's kind of a flywheel effect. So we want to kind of give you the options and let you guys discuss that and kind of figure out what's the bad thing. Regardless of what option you choose, they're all really good stories. So we're going to exceed the savings that we originally projected. So what we're going to show to you today on the first 7 or 8 slides is geared toward option A. And we'll get to those at the end. And then we'll kind of peel off option B and option C. What does that mean to you in project size, savings, and then what would you lose as far as what we would actually do in the buildings. So just want to kind of give you a brief framework on that. So again, what we originally said, if you remember this number, when we first started this a long time ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago, we had an estimate of about $775,000 in annual utility savings that we could drive to fund the project. That number, if we recall when we were talking about the high school, I think we mentioned, hey, we think that number is going to be higher. We didn't exactly know because we were still wrapping up the IGA for the balance of the district. That number for utility savings, this is money you're already spending, is over $1 million a year. So that's about, I think the number was 32% is what the total district savings was. So what we're saying is we will guarantee that you will save 32% of utility budget under this program.
In the first year.
That's an annual number. That's an annual number that will escalate throughout the term of the program. And that's how you fund the program.
And the term is?
15 years, which is common. That's dictated by the education code of the Texas code. So again, I don't want to reiterate, some of these things are repetitive, but you'll see in some of the subsequent slides, we're using education code 44901. A lot of the focus is on lighting, HVAC replacement. You have a lot of HVAC in this district that is, we've seen some as old as 33 years old, very old. That's a great job. Your maintenance department has kept that stuff running. Always you've gotten your money's worth out of it. At some point in time, that's going to come to a close and you're going to need to replace it through some mechanism. So here's a breakout of what we found. Again, this is option A, district-wide, over $1 million in annual utility savings. And we were very conservative and said on top of that, you're going to save about $120,000 a year through operational savings. And what that represents are things that you're already spending right now. For instance, the easy one here is lighting. You're spending a lot of money annually for bulbs and ballasts replacement. Our program will actually have a 10-year warranty for bulbs and ballasts. So for the first 10 years, we know we can take that amount off the table and you won't be spending that. So normally that number is higher. We want to be very conservative. And a lot of this savings, obviously, 90% of it is based upon your utility savings. So the total number, your annual savings is $1.13 million. So here's a summary slide, and we actually picked out, we didn't want to pick all the campuses. The actual IGA is 350 pages of information. We didn't want to go through 350 pages of information. I'm sure you probably didn't want us to do that either. But this is the first, a summary slide, and then we actually picked an elementary school, a middle school, and the 9th grade campus to show you what would happen in that building. So these are all the facilities, right? This is affecting every campus. What are we doing in these? And I'm not going to read all these to you, but some of the real big ones are obviously lighting. That's LED fixtures, interior and exterior. And that's what drives a lot of our savings. So we're able to do certain things that maybe wouldn't fund themselves because of the lighting. Under this program, we're going to put in 332 pieces of HVAC equipment, and Mike will get into a little bit of detail what that means. And that could be anything from a package unit, and we've even talked as big as chiller units at the high school.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's HVAC units is kind of a generic term, but that's a lot of steel. And one of the things you've got to remember, one of the challenges with this is taking off a package unit and putting on a new, more efficient unit. You're going to increase your SEER rating, but usually those things have a 30 to 40-year payback. So those type of things usually don't pay for themselves. And what we've done is create a program that helps fund some of those things that have a bad payback. So I won't read all these to you. Basic controls, building envelope, water conservation, transformers, cold plasma technology. There's really a host of what we call energy conservation measures. And again, the real focus of this, though, is on lighting and HVAC. So here's an example. We picked out Big Country as an example. You'll see on the left, this school is going to get $363,000 worth of investment. What that's going to drive is almost a little over $32,000 a year in utility savings, and then your total program savings of $580,000 over the 15-year term. And Mike, I'll let you maybe speak to the buildings because you.
Yeah, so, I mean, you've got age lighting, these are the kind of the current conditions and the new. So what you're, $363,000, what are you getting for $363,000? Obviously, every building on that previous list you just saw, every building in the district will have new LED lighting. So there won't be a building you have that does not have new LED lighting. Building automation systems, those are the control systems, which are computer-based control systems that control the buildings. Those will be upgraded as well. And a lot of those upgrades are enhancements because we're replacing HVAC systems. They need new controls. They kind of work together to help maximize the energy savings. Refrigeration upgrades, that's your walk-in coolers and freezers, high-efficiency transformers. You've got old transformers. The great thing about transformers is they are always running 24/7. So they have a really good, quick turnaround as far as payback is concerned. Water conservation. Other than this campus is on well, so we're not doing water conservation here, obviously, because you're not paying much for water. But on all your other facilities, water savings is another energy conservation measure. And then refrigerant optimization. And these ECMs you see here are applied to the vast majority of your schools. That's why we picked one elementary school, and the next slide, one middle school. You can see a lot of.
Big Country's on a well, you're saying?
No, this campus.
Oh,
This-
well, you thought they said Big
This campus is not getting water conservation measures because it's on well. You're not really paying much for water. The other campuses are. And you can see, like, this is a sample of your middle school. Scobie, it's getting a lot of the same energy conservation measures, high efficiency transformers, refrigeration. Building envelope is another one that majority of the buildings, in fact, I'm trying to think of a building that's not getting building envelope. They're all basically getting building envelope. Tightening up the infrastructure. When you tighten up the infrastructure, you help control humidity. We're doing controls that help us reduce the amount of outside air and still meet code. When you reduce outside air, you help control humidity. So there's things that are not just replacing old equipment and just doing some fancies. We're helping the environment as well. And then there's also the 9th grade annex. The 9th grade annex isn't getting any equipment, but it's getting a lot of upgrades. LED lighting, the building system, the automation system to control. You got a lot of pieces of equipment on that building. Some of them have these, it gets kind of technical, but they got these energy wheels that help conserve energy. A lot of those aren't functioning. So a lot of our money there is going to be spent, going through the entire systems and make sure everything's operational, and then controls to make them work properly. And then some of the other technologies as well, transformers, refrigeration. You see a lot of redundant stuff in a lot of these buildings. Tough slide to read, but what it is, it's a slide that shows percent utility savings. So blue, green is just because it's easier to read if you have blue, green. Blue and green don't mean anything. But the school, let's see, the high school far to the right, 37% savings. Some of the buildings are upwards of 40% savings. The lowest building, I think, is like 27% savings. On the far left-hand side, the athletic field house. All we're doing is lighting, but we can save 27% of the utility that building's using. So this is kind of a little bit of an eyesore from this distance, but it gives you an idea of the percent of utilities that are being saved at each building.
So again, I mentioned earlier we had presented this a month ago. I wanted to quickly recap because this all integrates, and you'll see it at the end where we kind of break out option A, option B, and option C, and that really pertains to how do you guys want to fund the high school project in and of itself. So this again, a recap. The budget estimate that you guys were given through MEP to do those projects at the high school for the things, I think your total budget was around 12 million. What we're talking about is things that we can affect energy savings. So lighting, HVAC equipment, things of that nature. And we'll show you a list of all that on a follow-up slide. It was about 8.2 million. One thing that was left off of that was there was 19 circulating pumps that were not included in that scope of work, and that's very critical because you're affecting the end and the beginning of that energy system, and we're leaving the middle out. So if you include the $475,000, which is our estimate for replacing those 9 pumps, you're looking at about 8.67 million. So again, our number is not an estimate, right? We've gone out and done detailed work and gotten quotes and bids and scope of work and all that good stuff. Our number is 8.1 million. And that does include 2 things. That includes the pumps, and that also includes an additional $582,000 of ECMs to that building. So things like
building envelope, refrigeration, those kind of things are in there.
So we put that all together, and the net effect, again, all we're doing right here is comparing your original estimate. Again, estimates are high. That was not a hard quote or a budgeted number you guys had, but that's kind of what you build your bond upon, right? They gave you an estimate of what it would take to do that. What we're saying is we're going to deliver about $1.1 million in additional value. Through we're including the pumps and doing it for $3,000 cheaper, and we're doing an additional $582,000 worth of energy conservation measures. So that's a snapshot comparing your original budget to what we actually found when we went out and got hard numbers. The other thing from this, and you'll hear me mention this a couple of times, your high school, I think Mike mentioned, was at 37% savings. That's pretty high for a high school. Normally your high schools and larger footprints, you traditionally don't see as much savings there because they may be on more complex systems and maybe in a chiller system. That's a tremendous opportunity to save a lot of money at that building. So I think the annual number for just the high school alone was about $215,000 to $220,000 annually that you would save at the high school in utilities alone. So one of the questions that we had last time was, well, for that 8.1 million, what is that specifically? What are you doing in the building, and what are you not doing in the building? There's certain things that we wouldn't do, and we broke those out on the orange on the right side, and on the blue, it's included in our scope. So I'm not going to read all those to you, but those, again, on the left is mainly things that will drive energy savings. What we didn't include is anything that doesn't have a payback. So Mike, I don't know if you want to give a couple examples of each, possibly.
Yeah, and the asterisk that you might see up there, those are the things that we're doing over and above. So the 19 recirculating pumps and the evaporative condensers, which are a device you mount on the chillers. As part of this, you're getting brand new chillers. You can mount devices on them to make those chillers even run more efficiently than they would operate coming right out of the factory. So that's what those are. Those are over and above. But more importantly is what's not included, and it's electrical stuff, that it's main switch gear, it's plumbing, which is ADA, as you can see there. It's a lot of plumbing upgrades, and then the fire protection system.
So you'll still have, the bond dollars to address those things, but so we were really comparing things that could save energy and pay for themselves or drive savings versus what we couldn't do under that project. So that's a fairly comprehensive list of that. This is probably one of the main differences in our program and a traditional methodology of doing either construction or renovation, which is construction manager at risk, design, build, whatever path you want to go down is, I guess what we call is the certainty of the outcome, right? So when we give these numbers, we're guaranteeing the savings. We are not coming back to you for change orders. So if the price of copper goes up, and some of these projects, maybe 6 months, 12 months down the road. I've seen a lot of school districts when Katrina hit and all the contractors went to New Orleans. Well, a lot of those prices that they had set up for bonds dramatically went up because now they can't secure the people to do it. So what we're saying is that's ours. We own that. If something changes, if we miss something, we don't come to you with a change order and say, oh, by the way, hey, we need you guys to approve this to get the project done. So that's a 2-slide recap of just the high school. So we started out saying that everything you just saw was kind of option A. So what we wanted to do is give you the options. So that everything you just saw was under the assumption that you guys would fund the high school portion, which is 8.1 million, using bond dollars or general fund. So what that means is that we're going to drive $23.6 million of capital improvement, 8.1 funded by the district under bond or general fund, and that leaves me $15.6 million that I'm able to do projects in your schools, district-wide for the rest of the campuses. That's going to drive the 1.1 million in annual savings. And again, these are numbers you've seen. The next point I want to make sure I'm real clear on, you're also in this program going to get $1 million in positive cash flow over the 15 years, not annually, over 15 years. What that means is you're going to have an extra $1 million for your general fund to use as you see fit that doesn't need to be used to pay for the program. So in this scenario, you're going to receive $1 million over the term of the program in addition to what we talked about. So we've already talked about this, but a quick recap. 332 new HVAC units, 30,000 lights, and all the things that Mike talked about, BAS controls, transformers, and again, I don't want to read that to you again. The cherry on top to this, you're also going to be eligible for rebates when you do lighting and other projects from your utility providers. We've had discussions with them, and we've got them in queue to come out and do the pre-inspection when and if we do begin the project. The estimate we got was much higher than this, but we were hesitant to put a big number out there because, again, we don't control that, right? That's a pot of money your utility provider puts out there, and then we will help you fill out the forms to apply to get that rebate. We think that's a really conservative number, and we hope to have a check for you bigger than that.
And there is a sense of urgency in that number as well, because the CPS, your utility provider, has a budget for rebates. And when that budget goes away, rebates go away. And right now, they've got quite a large budget, but when we were in our, we did have a conversation with them about it. I guess the local Air Force base is looking to do a lot of energy conservation measures right now to tap onto that budget as well. So we need to get in that queue as quickly as possible so we can maximize that rebate.
And that's why we would never take that 550 and put it into the budget, because we can't count on it. We're pretty sure we're going to get it, but I can't make that an assumption on our financials we create, because again, we don't control that. We could go to CPS and they might say, well, the money's gone. So again, that's a nice cherry on top, and we're very sure that number is going to be bigger. So next scenario is, what if the district didn't want to use the bond dollars allocated for the high school? Maybe in this scenario, they only use half. So let's say we're going to use $4 million towards the high school project. So that total number is going to be $20.9 million, $4 million that's invested, and we're going to be able to drive $16.9 million throughout the whole district. That's going to lower your annual savings to $926,000 versus the $1.1 million, and that's going to have a positive cash flow of $470,000 over the 15 years. So again, we're comparing $1 million to $470,000 and about $1.1 million in savings to $926,000. And Mike, you may want to talk about the scope reduction, because you live, eat, and breathe that, so I'll let you talk about that.
What don't you get in this option B? Replacing 87, so basically you're still getting everything at the high school except the chillers. Okay, your chillers are the newest piece of equipment you have out there, but they still should be replaced, but in this scope, you won't get those new chillers. You also are only, the previous slide showed 332 pieces of equipment, now it's 87. All those other pieces of equipment that we were looking to replace across the district, the other 250 pieces of equipment, you don't get any of that. Transformers get taken out. BAS control scope gets reduced dramatically to only looking at, where before we were going to go into every building and look at the scope of look at the sequence of operation of your controls to make them run as efficiently as possible. We're going to have to take a step back from there and say, okay, now what is really necessary? So we're only looking at the necessary scope to maximize energy efficiency for the changes we're making with different pieces of equipment. Reduce building envelope. Building envelope was almost in every building. Now it's going to be only about 50% of the buildings. And then your freezer controls, water conservation, a lot of that is going to go away in this scope, in this option B. You can reduce scope, and that also reduces your annual savings, and that reduces the project size.
And then the other caveat with this is we're doing less energy conservation measures, so your potential rebates from CPS will shrink. So in this case, again, it's a conservative number of about $270,000. And again, rebates are a one-time, when you do the project, you will get that. That's not an annual ongoing thing.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm getting kind of lost on this whole thing. So, just if we wanted to do everything that you told us that we should do, right?
Yep.
And, okay, so we have the option of moving, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the option of moving the money from the bond that we were going to use for electrical stuff, right? We
Right.
have the option of either taking it out of fund balance or going out for a loan. Is that correct?
Well, so the consistency in this whole thing is, through all three scenarios, is we're gonna generate savings.
Right,
Right.
no, I understand all the
So
savings.
that pot of money, that will change, right,
Right.
by
No,
each scenario.
I'm not talking about the savings. I'm talking about money, like, and
Right.
I'm not even looking at the savings yet. So we need $8 million to do electrical stuff at the high school.
Oh, and
Oddly, I mean, rough.
Option A, the number that they're proposing, which is the 23.6, 8 million of that is Southwest High School.
Okay,
And in this proposal, the district would fund that, whether it was bond or fund balance.
right, okay, so, but let me finish my question. So it's $23.6 million. So originally, our thoughts were, we take out a loan,
Correct.
right, for $23.6 million. Let me just finish. And then, I mean, worst comes to worst, we have $23.6 million anyway, right? I mean, just if something happened catastrophic, we had to pay back the loan. That would allow us to take the 8.1 million that we had set aside from the bond to do electrical work at the high school and use it for other improvements at the high school, right?
Sure.
Yes? Okay. Right, whatever that million was. So ideally, we want to, in order to maximize our savings and returns and all those things, we want to do the $23.6 million, ideally. Like if we just said,
If we wanted to touch every school and do this program comprehensively across the district, it would be $15 million that we would take out a loan. And then we would have to put in $8 million through bond or fund balance. So
Okay.
the savings that we generate in the high school, instead of paying that back, because usually we get that from utilities, we're gonna use that to take care of the other stuff throughout the district.
okay,
So we're not getting that savings back as far as to pay our debt. We're using that savings to move to do more things across the district.
so we would be taking out a $15 million loan,
Loan.
and we would have to pony up $8 million out of
Fund
fund balance,
or
not
bond.
anything to do with the bond.
Or we
If
could
we
use-
wanted to use the money for architectural
Correct.
things for the high school.
Correct.
Well, I think where you were going, where I was thinking we were gonna do, would borrow the 23 million and use
That's
the
what I
8
thought.
for architectural improvements somewhere else.
Borrow the 23 million though, borrow, maybe I'm on the school, but if you borrow 23 million and the district doesn't put in that 8.1, the return is not going to get you the 15 million, or 15 million. That's correct.
Right.
You'll never pay back 23 million that you borrowed.
We can't generate enough savings
I see
to
what
pay
you
for all the HVAC. You guys have a lot of HVAC needs, and that's
Yeah.
expensive. And again, is it something, the lighting has a great payback? Replacing a package unit, terrible payback. It needs to be done, though. So the question you guys have to answer is, what path do I want to choose to go down? And the last one, to give you guys the third option, then what we said was, all right, if you guys don't want to contribute anything at all, and you want the project to be funded purely on the savings, it's going to drive $11.5 million of capital improvements throughout 38 districts and give you about $817,000 in annual savings. And Mike, you may want to visit on what that scope reduction, I think this is what Mr. Kruger was referring to, it's a lot less stuff.
Yes.
Probably better off just saying what you wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically,
Let me preface my brief story.
Yep.
So in the beginning of this project, and
This is what we were talking about.
clarified a lot of my confusion
In the vision.
yesterday in the meeting, that we always presented to the board that this was a program that would basically pay itself back over time because of replacing older equipment that uses more energy with newer equipment that uses less energy. Therefore, instead of paying our check to CPS, we get CPS less and we pay for the equipment over time. So, in the beginning, I think I've been jokey of saying this program basically encompasses all those things. But only if we contribute the $8 million would it be able to basically pay for itself over time. This option that we're fixing to go through is the only option that would completely
Right.
self-fund itself over
'Cause-
time. It's less things that could happen, it's less kind of replacement of equipment, but option C is the only one where it pays for itself for 15 years, recovery energy savings.
Correct.
Well, what if the energy rates go up in 15 years?
Right, so there's an escalation built into that. Right, so what we're guaranteeing is consumption that translates into a budget dollar.
So the program term is, our loan would be 15 years?
Yes.
But I thought we needed to, I thought replacing HVACs was a huge priority because of the age of the HVACs. And with this plan, we're not gonna get that.
I think we're gonna get there, Thomas, we have a conversation. I guess we have to look at our HVACs all over. We asked this, question to Mike number 2 yesterday. Our youngest HVAC system on a roof in the district that's been identified within this program is 17 years. Our oldest ones are 33 years old. The original one's put on Southwest High School, back in 84. So, you know, our staff has done a really great job of keeping everything alive beyond the expected life of 45 years, or 8 years beyond that. So we do have an issue, but it's more of an issue at the high school with all those units. It's not so much an issue as the units that are 17 years based on what we've seen. They have 13 more years before we have to move. So I think we have to consider, you know, all those things. How old is the equipment? Where are we? What can we afford to do? What do we want to contribute to this program? Or do we want a program that's going to pay for itself? Or you know, other things to kind of look at. I think, let's go through option C, and maybe Thomas and Mike talk about some of our equipment that's out there. What they're doing is replacing other things in our district that are coming down the pike that are going to have to be replaced in the future. Either we want that to happen, or we can kind of do it now and start capturing the energy savings on some of it. But at the same time, if we don't put it all together, we don't take advantage of all the energy savings. But if we put it all together, it's not all going to pay for itself. We're going to have to
Right.
And that's a great point. I think at the end of the day, and we'll walk through option Cs, but at the end of the day, the picture hopefully you got was, you're going to have to use $8.1 million at the high school to take care of those things we talked about, whether that's through the bond dollars and you go through a traditional method, or if you incorporate it into our project. You know, we think we're going to bring more value of the $1.1 million because you're going to get the pumps, you're going to get the additional ECMs. And the nice thing about that is, I don't need that savings from the high school to fund that building, right? You've paid bond dollars for that. Now I can take it and use it for all those other buildings that need HVAC equipment that has a terrible payback. So at the end of the day, the story is, you're not going to, I can't pay through everything just through lighting, right? You have a pretty significant infrastructure need, and energy savings alone isn't going to get you there. And it could be part of the solution, but at the end of the day, you're still going to pay that $8.1 million to address those things that we outlined there. But Mike, do you want to, maybe you and Tom go through the...
So the option C is option B, all the stuff that we talked about taking out to make option B work. Option C takes out even more. Basically, option C gets nothing at the high school as far as air conditioning replacement. So the rooftop units, the pumps, the chillers, none of that is included in option C. And then we had to additionally take out some of the other options, or some of the other energy conservation measures. And there's no air conditioning equipment in any of this anywhere. We've taken out significantly more controls. We've taken out significantly more building envelope, for instance. That bullet went from 50% to 90% is what's being removed. Basically, what we have now is a project still generates $816,000 in energy savings a year, right? But what's generating that now, and what we're able to pay for, are just the energy conservation measures. Hardware is very expensive and has a long payback. None of that can be put in the project any longer. It's just the energy conservation measures. Lighting, some building envelope, some water, controls, those kind of things that pay for themselves much quicker.
Does it include the HVAC at high school?
No, nothing at the high school. Lighting at the high school, building envelope at the high school.
I guess what I have to say is, unfortunately, the way it seems to me is, no matter which scenario we go through, whether we pay $8.1 million, put it in there to get the stuff at the high school, you do that, then there's no money left in the bond to do any of the other stuff that you.
That we wanted to do.
And if you-
Right back to square one.
Exactly.
Either way, we're gonna end up paying what we have left in the bond to do the infrastructure stuff that needs to be done in high school. I don't think in the end, it's not doing what I think everybody had hoped was to be able to let us
Do
keep
both.
that $8 million set aside to do different things and still get the infrastructure.
Real quick, what are the districts are y'all working with right now? We talked about this before. Y'all work with anybody else in San Antonio?
It's local San Antonio. We've worked with several districts, not to give you a list of that, but right now we're working on projects at Edgewood ISD, SNS Consolidated.
You're not doing anything with them right now. Have y'all done anything with any districts in San Antonio?
in San Antonio.
Completed projects that we can look at.
Yeah, I'll have to get you a list of that. Some of that's gonna
San Antonio.
predate me. So in San Antonio, yeah, I'll have to do some research on get back to you that. But we've done a lot in Texas, you know, for what that's
What
worth.
have you done in San Antonio just right off the bat? You think that-
I really want to do some research on that, and I'll make sure I'll put that on my to-do list to follow up with you, and I'll have that by Thursday.
So I just want to make sure I understand. At the end of the day, Thomas, what you're saying is we're not going to be able to accomplish the goal that we had looked at the beginning, which was to do,
When we originally kind of went into this, the thought was maybe we could borrow money,
yes.
fund and expertise to keep those bond dollars to do aesthetic.
Construction.
The way, right now, the way I see it is, either way, we're either gonna put it into this program and get that stuff, or we don't do it in this program, we're still gonna have to pay the money for the contractor to do that.
We're not going to be able to free up that $10 million.
We're gonna be able to free up what we're hoping to free up to do the aesthetic portion of the inside of the high school. That would probably have to be another phase in a different bond in the future.
Thank you.
Questions? I know it's a lot of information. I think at the end of the day, the story is that we can definitely do a project and have it pay for itself, but it's not going to accomplish what we want. There's no magic bullet. A lot of that stuff doesn't have a great payback that needs to be done, and there's simply no way to make that work mathematically. So again, we're presenting the IGA to the administration and the board is kind of the step we're at right now, and then, you know, implementation for a lot of this stuff lighting is something you can do nights and weekends. And a lot of these projects will be done over breaks, summer break, spring break. Obviously, we don't want to infect the learning environment.
Moving forward, so you guys know, we're gonna get the IGA report from ABM so that we can look at as a district, Thomas and his staff, and kind of go through those things and look at the report. We got some preliminary pricing so that we can compare, and then, and we're having them come back on Thursday to meet with the subcommittee for some questions and answer sessions.
Yeah, when you come to the question, well, which one of these options do we prefer as a board? I mean, I have no idea at this moment. So, as I've asked in the past, we really need a recommendation from
Correct, sir.
the administration.
And through this journey also, we got this information last Thursday, last Wednesday, so we're still going through it too. So we're in the preliminary stages on making a recommendation to the board, so we need more time as a staff to kind of go through and look at it.
Could we have also an option, when you come back to us, I mean, just off the top of my head, I want to realize the most savings, right? Of course, we all want to save the most money. But, you know, the angle that we were going at to get those $8 million back into the high school, remember? So can you give us a scenario that's maybe we take $4 million out of the whole project at the high school and do, you know, like only have to go into fund balance like 4 million, you know, like bond 4 million, fund balance 4 million, you know
For
what I mean?
construction? You mean
Yeah,
for construction?
so that we can
Okay.
make a better,
Yeah, we've done that. That was option B.
But that's for the infrastructure.
I'm talking about
She's talking
architecture.
construction, yeah.
Yeah, I think she's talking about the aesthetic thing.
The remodel.
Yeah,
You're talking our actual project that we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yes.
Okay.
you know, that, I don't wanna get into the thing that like at Legacy and say, I don't wanna tell you, we want you to save us $8 million, but then we don't know what we're really giving up, like we kind of learned at Legacy. I don't wanna do that over here
Okay.
also.
Okay.
The other thing that we need to talk about in the meeting with Mark McClellan is the impact of a future potential bond and the fact that you go out for loan with that new for a range.
Right.
So we need to be very careful about,
Right.
just saying we're gonna go out for loan.
Right.
With the research and analysis, because we don't want to impact a future
Right.
opportunity. And when you go out for those things and work with underwriters, that bond rating has a lot to do with what happens in
Okay.
Well, I think too that at the end of the day, the goal we had in mind is not going to be realized. And although through this process we've discovered we have a lot of needs, we already knew that. So, I mean, okay, the specificity that you're giving us, we didn't, you know, have a very clear idea about that. But money-wise, we're not going to realize the outcome that I believe that most of us had envisioned.
I think we thought that we could do this $8 million is gonna pay for itself over time. We could do that fund balance, put those funds back over a period of time, take the bond funds, do the,
Correct.
credit work, and,
That's not going to happen.
that's not reality.
Right.
There's not cost savings.
So that now in our mind, we have to justify taking out a loan for things that we could probably do, over time with real money that we have now as opposed to money that we have to borrow.
Yeah, part of our conversation with the community in 2012, when we were starting the idea of this bond, we talked a lot about equity, that half of our high school students went to a high school, would be shining, had
Absolutely.
kind of innovative, up-to-date opportunities. We sold them on the idea that we were also putting funds for Southwest High School to do the same thing. As we get into the project, on the construction phase and design, we see that we'll spend every penny and students will see.
Nothing.
Other than maybe painting and doing CTE building. So, we're not really meeting the message that we were sending, so we're looking for other opportunities.
Right.
Stave off those infrastructure needs.
I was going to say, is that possible? Can we do that?
Yeah, we can.
Do we have time to do that, to do the construction piece, the visible piece, and then do the infrastructure piece over time as we accumulate money?
There will be some things that, on the project, within the construction portion, that infrastructure will need to be upgraded. But as far as the overall state of the building, there's things that we could put off if we wanted to go that route.
Right.
But as far as the construction part, there's gonna be some, we're talking about moving Cyber Patriot labs to areas that don't have.
Right. What was the cost of that construction piece?
The overall, there's a bunch of.
Not
different
including the ABM piece,
Oh, well, as far as the overall.
just the visible, the remodel, I guess you would
The
call it.
remodel, where we were at,
It was about the same number we about $8 or $9 million.
Okay, so we could do that conceivably and then put off the other things and do those over the next several years?
Without having the loan. for
Right,
that
without
long
having the loan.
period And not worrying about how much interest we're gonna pay. It's probably not even gonna come out in the end.
Yeah, and all along, Mr. Valles and Mr. Chris kept on the tabulation of our fund balance. You're tagging $5 million fund balance to the high school project. It's been identified like that all along. We would not have enough funds. We have
Correct.
that $5 million, that we can kind of include here and kind of what we can do. I think our priority needs to be high school.
Sure.
HVAC, want to hear that?
Yeah.
We may want to look at kind of scaling this whole thing down and come up with an option B that includes some fund balance, but maybe not to the $4 million. If we don't do the $8 million, we're going to lose out on opportunity, but, we may just have to say that's too costly for the right now. That, we have to scale back. We want it. I guess what we need from the board is what is your desire? Do you want to make sure that we're thinking cosmetic? Do you want to make sure that we're dealing with equipment over 30 years old? Because now we have to start kind of bringing different options back.
Well, Dr. Verstaff, I feel like since this is, we finally got the information that we were needing, okay? So for me, I need to think about it for a few, for a day or two or three to kind of, because for me right now, there's resistance to the loan idea. Unless what we were getting in return was worth the loan, right? Like, okay, something really big, which for us meant doing the cosmetics and the construction and what the kids are going to be able to experience and see and feel, the parents. And now that we know that that's not going to happen, then it's a whole different picture. So we have to think about this in a whole different way. So I mean, for me personally, I need a couple of days to give you some feedback.
And while there's no, magic bullet that can pay for the $8.1 million, right, those are significant costs that have a bad payback. What I don't want to do is walk away having a kind of a downer feel about it, because no matter what scenario you look at, even scenario B, we're taking money that you're already spending and using it to drive savings. And, if you did a little bit this year, a little bit next year, sure, you might realize that. But in option A, you're talking about $1.1 million a year, which is about $90,000 a month in savings that you're losing every month that we don't move forward with this. So I mean, again, while we can't do everything that we initially wanted to accomplish, I think, A, we can bring value doing the high school project because we're gonna do it for about $500,000 cheaper than the original estimate, and we're doing the additional ECMs and doing the pumps. So there's an economic upside there. Again, does that get you everything to where you wanna be? No. But the other thing it does is drives that savings out to your other buildings that we can do 332 pieces of HVAC equipment, all these other things. So again, while we couldn't come up with the end-all be-all solution to address that thing, to want to do things that don't have a payback, there's a great program here regardless of what you choose.
Right.
It's great. I mean, if you can take money you're already spending, and even if it's the version C, lighting and some controls thing, that's a great story. Or you take the 8.1 you're going to spend anyway, right? Regardless, you're going to have to spend that money. Let's get a little more incremental value out of it and then spin that savings out of there and create a flywheel effect, then fund the rest of that stuff to get to the $15 million loan.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to close with that and you know,
Can we get a copy of that, please? We didn't get a paper copy.
Yeah.
Email it to us?
Yes. Okay, email. Perfect.
yeah, absolutely.
So we can study it a little bit.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, for all your work and bringing the data and presenting mine. Thank you. So that's, around that, we went a little bit over today, so we appreciate the board meeting.
Sir, we got one more item.
Oh,
Yes, we do. We have item,
We're gonna continue bringing this to the board, over time, because we know, we need some time to process the information, think about it. We're gonna go back and if we can start kind of highlighting those important aspects that we're trying, what goals we're trying to objectives we're trying to achieve, that would help us kind of frame maybe an option B, maybe a E, to bring back for the future. We are moving forward with the career technical building.
Correct.
That will be on next week's board visit, so
Actually,
we're not holding up the high school project.
it'll be February, Brown.
February, I'm sorry, February Brown Bag.
We'll be bringing it to subcommittee on Thursday.
When did y'all want us to vote on this?
We're still in the preliminary, we need to see the IGA report, and they're gonna meet with subcommittee. We
Because I
needed
thought
to,
we had a time,
we did, but since we decided to move forward with phase one of the career center, really, we need to make a decision probably by March or April for the rest of the high school renovation project. Because we're moving forward to start this summer with the CTE building.
and how much was that gonna cost us?
That's around 2.5,
And that's
2.7.
coming out of the bond?
That's
Okay.
part of the bond fund.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's phase one.
Sure.
So because we wanted to really get started on that building to get finished and ready for start of school.
And the cosmetic changes you wanted to make at the high school needed to be,
Well,
that decision needed to be made by when?
Well, we still have time for that.
Okay.
We need to know where we are with, if we're moving forward with something that we're doing through ABM.
Right.
So that we can tell architects and engineers and MEP on that side what they're going to do and that's kind of the issue moving forward with the
so at
project.
this point, if we're moving forward with the Cape building, does that mean that we're not gonna include it in
And
this project?
correct, we told them that that part of that building is not part of this project.
Okay.
We're touching that, whatever we do in there infrastructure wise is in that project
And
based
how
on.
much money do we have to start off or to get
That project is about 2.7, that's what estimated budget.
It's out of the bond.
We haven't put
Is
it,
that part of the 8 million or it's not?
correct, it's
It
part of
is?
the original 9 that's in the, yeah.
Okay, so that confuses me even more, but anyway.
You know, next time I'll bring, and I'll show you kind of the bond dollars set aside for Southwest High School
I would
renovation.
really like that.
And then,
Thomas, can I ask you a question? I'm sorry, since I don't get to come on Thursdays, I want to ask him right now. Would you feel confident in our ability to do what this company wants to do for us if we decide not to move forward with the loan? In our district's ability to do this over time? Or is their expertise not easily replicated?
I think it's something we've done, lighting upgrades before in the past. We're still gonna be hiring a contractor. I don't really know how that's not an easy one to answer. I mean, I think that they can do the job, I think we could do it as well. So with what they're doing is it's a guaranteed, they're gonna, if it doesn't meet what they say it we're gonna meet,
Right.
they're gonna go check, that's coaches.
I'll answer this.
that and, Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, it would all get done at once.
Right.
Okay?
It wouldn't be a piecemeal, it'd
And
be.
that's the only way we can realize that type of savings. Okay? Doing it over time, we're gonna be paying out that money regardless. Okay, continue paying out
Would
that
be a
$90,000
district-wide
a month.
all the lighting in the whole district.
And, no, I won't put you on the spot, because I know your opinion already, but I won't put you on the spot right now.
But I would like to have his opinion, that's why I asked him.
Ultimately,
Let me just answer that. I don't want to put Thomas on the spot. I don't think we have enough information to answer that question that you're asking.
Dr. Verstuff, but if Mr. Vasquez knows the answer, then we should all know
I
the
haven't
answer.
heard it from his mouth, but
Okay.
I've got a good
So you're
feeling.
speculating.
Yeah, I've got a real good feeling.
The devil's in the detail. So we have not received possession of the, what's it called, internal grade audit. We've been talking about the IGA. I can tell you that the folks who have been the feet on the street have been forthcoming with data when we ask for it. Of course, we have to wait because it takes a long time to kind of get this data in. We have a lot of other questions about transparency and understanding what items cost and what they don't.
Okay.
And, you know, do we have access to that or not? And that's been kind of a question we have ongoing. But when we ask for things, we've been able to kind of work through them. I don't think Thomas has seen enough information to even
Okay,
make a educated.
Okay.
That's what they're not. We have confidence in the fact that they know their stuff. Let me tell you that.
okay,
That gentleman standing up there, the engineer, he knows this energy conservation items very, very well. And we just don't have all the information to make.
sure.
Even to make a recommendation.
Okay.
So we were gonna have all the information by January when we came back. I mean, I really didn't see anything different
Well, the
that made
original,
that much of a difference between what we saw now and what we saw in
the
December.
original project did not include the high school. We were gonna do the high school on our own with that bond.
we met with them last week, Thursday, we met with them yesterday, and we met with them this morning. The IGA, what they were telling us is done, they're trying to put a cover letter on, I think what they said yesterday.
They had
And they're
executive
gonna email
notes
it to
that
me,
need to
but
be
they said
added.
it's like 400 pages, so it's not gonna be something that,
You have to
I'm not-
study it,
I'm
right?
not that good of a reader to
It's
read
gonna-
them all in one
and
day,
there's a-
so I don't-
And along with that, there's an actual,
I'm not even sure what that
a
looks like.
third-party audit that needs to happen.
Yeah.
There's also another step that
Before we
we
would,
that
before
we
we
have
would
to
go
have
into any
happen. It's an
agreement.
outside independent person to look at the audit to see that the
Okay.
exhibits that they're saying that they're there are actually true. So that's
Okay.
something that's outside of their group.
We'll
which is
review it.
Good, which is what we need.
Yeah,
And then also,
Yeah, the education code requires the third-party outside
okay.
audit.
All right,
That-
so we
that
just
still
wait.
has to happen.
I
Thank you,
just
sir.
want to add one small thing. And when we've had projects in the past, we've asked, well, can't the maintenance department do it? Well, y'all can do a lot of stuff, like drywall and concrete and all
We
that
would
kind of
never
stuff.
be able to do something
But,
like this.
No,
yeah,
no.
so, but what I'm saying is, the stuff that you could do, sometimes we say, well, it's not really cost effective for us to have them do it because they already have 500 other things that they're gonna do. So even though you say, we have the capability of, doing all of these things that this other company is gonna do, sometimes we have to look at it cost effective. Like, what are we gonna be taking you away from doing that you would be doing when we have?
And I just want to clarify, I didn't mean that you guys would do yourselves, I mean that you would manage, right?
What if we got a bid from some other general
Right.
contractor?
Internally, we would
Everybody
not-
knows about
No,
doing
I
it.
didn't mean
We would
that.
not be
Compare
able
the
to do
numbers,
this.
apples
I
to
didn't
apples.
But with
Y'all do what
me
they're
and
gonna do.
Raphael together could, we could bid it out if we
Right.
wanted to, but like Mr. Vasquez said.
That's what I meant.
This one is a complete sweep of the district all at one time within
Right.
a year.
it,
And we would not be able to do that if we
No.
bid it out.
Well, we wouldn't, couldn't afford it anyway.
I don't wanna say, I wanna put it in the board would have to be willing to put funds towards that. And so that's another thing you have to look at, where this was a route where we were gonna borrow the money instead of just paying for it. So there's
Yeah.
two sides.
Right.
Yeah, we could possibly do it through a CSP or a bid, but then it'd be the direction if that's where we wanted to spend fund balance or.
Right.
Right, well, several million a year or whatever, 3 million a year for that.
I just wanted to today make sure everybody understood that, I think, what I was hearing, the whole group, what we were hoping for of
Mm-hmm,
being able to say, because I guess it was 11 million or whatever, we're gonna do 2.7 for the career center. That portion's been pulled out, with whatever was left, we were hoping to save that, put it into cosmetic and aesthetic things.
correct.
And well, the way I see it right now, that is not gonna happen. We're gonna have to upfront some money either way.
And
Whether we do it in this program or we do it in the bond.
Because most of the stuff involves energy efficiency stuff, but what about all the cosmetic things that we have planned, or the?
Well, that's what he said.
Well, what we have gotten,
I'm gonna do the inside of the house, I'm not gonna worry about the exterior of the paint. I'm a woman.
Hear me roar.
and so what we have from Pfluger and their group is things that we had for MEP to go into our school and look at, things that need to be done as far as infrastructure. We've also gave them designs of what we want that to look like with the bond funds as far as architectural. And so what we would have to do is go back and meet with them and say, due to the changes in the architectural, what infrastructure needs are there? And so they're gonna have to look at that and then give us a number, and we have to go back and take a look at what can happen and what needs to be taken out, or what we can do and what we can't do now. Up to this point, that's why we still have time,
Okay.
because we're not jumping on the high school project yet, we're moving forward with CTE. We still have time to look at this, and so that we can, as a group,
Make a recommendation.
I don't, at this point right now, there's no, without having that IGA in hand.
Yeah.
and having time to review it, there's not really a way to make a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
It's important to note that even if we did the 8.1, there's still $4 million worth of infrastructure needs we identified on the construction side that are not part of this conservation. So even the 8.1, there's things like breakers that aren't covered in.
Right.
All the electrical panels and things like that, they're not energy,
Still $4 million.
they're not energy saver, and we still need to
So
do
that's
those
12.
in the project.
So there's 12 then.
If we want to include everything that we've identified in the construction to upgrade, to give electricity, to run all of the cyber patriots, so change out all the breakers, change out the old screw fuses and the big heavy equipment to updated 2000 devices.
What, have we thought about or considered the idea of what would happen if we did just the high school? Just the high school?
Well, the-
How, what would that look
the-
like?
the high
If we
school-
just, okay, the most, right now, the important thing is the high
So,
school.
it's not, it can be an option, but what they do is they realize the savings. So in the high school, they're saying, that if they change out lighting and some of the envelope
Yeah.
stuff, there's 215,000 in savings.
Yes,
So you take 215 times 15 years,
yeah,
and you times that, whatever that number is, what, 3.75.
okay.
That's how much money we would have available to do stuff in the high school.
Well, you say you have available, you have to put that money aside, so you have it available. They're just gonna say, they're not gonna give you a check, they're
Well-
gonna say, they're saying you're gonna save that on your electrical bill.
We're not
So
gonna have the money
you gotta save
available.
that $200,000 or $300,000
Yeah, we'll
every
move it
month.
over.
Every year.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? They're not gonna give you no
There's not
money.
enough energy cost.
Okay, hold on. We're almost at 1:30.
To make it
We've got
worth
one
it.
more item. I'm gonna ask that we move along, and then, we can address you after the meeting, those that want to individually.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. The one more item is the, technology initiative items.
Correct. If the board, just to reflect a little bit, last summer, we made a purchase for some devices for the 6th through 9th graders, and it was Chromebooks.
Oh, yeah.
And we got those out, we got those in our schools. Part of the program, when we pushed those out, is we pushed the devices that the middle schools had to the 4th and 5th graders. We had most of those devices were up to 3 years old that we pushed to the 4th and 5th graders, and they went through 3 years of middle school treatment. And so some of those devices, we've had some issues with them. We've kind of cleared it out, but we would like to go ahead and move forward with making a purchase for the 4th and 5th graders, getting them new Chromebooks from bond funds. This is part of the bond, the 2016 bond sale. And also, we have and Doty's here, but we're starting a phase of our Apple iPads in the elementaries, the third through kindergarten. Those are starting to become obsolete.
Yeah.
And so we want to replace the 3rd grade iPads at this time and purchase 4th and 5th graders Chromebooks for a tune of $909,383, and those will be from the bond funds that were set aside for technology device purchases.
Is that the end of the bond funds or
No,
what?
that puts us at, right now we have about 2.8 available to spend on devices, so that, subtract 900, that'll leave us with about 1.8, so that'll give us maybe 2 more years of purchases. And we could space them out, we just have to be creative. So we'll probably have to focus on the 1st through 3rd grade next, or possibly high school. And so
Can we just move that to the high school bond?
Yeah.
Forget the
Let's not buy
technology?
no device. That's for cosmetics.
Dang.
Can we? No?
It's up to the board.
Why can't we? Okay.
Well, we need technology in the hands of
Yeah,
everyone.
but,
I know
you
we
know,
do, but we also need a new high school.
well, that's right, listen, this is something that needs a lot of thought.
Yeah.
And we're not giving it any. And it needs a lot of thought because what we're doing is taking money that we have really sold on the basis of a capital improvement, but only lasts a year or two, and we've got to buy new ones, or 3 or something like that. So this is not really working for us. Now, I expect that everybody does this, and the computer company is just making a fortune on selling these obsolete deals. That's, and the fact is that probably most of these kids have one, even in the poor places. I'm just saying, all I'm saying here is that we really oughtn't to be just so casually doing this and say, let's spend another 800,000. I mean, we have to now, but we really ought to think about how we're going to do this, because I don't think this is right.
Especially when you mentioned capital improvements, because we just got through really discussing some serious capital
That is a
improvements
capital improvement, but this isn't.
that will save us some serious money. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, we need technology in the hands of all the kids, but when we start looking at,
Whether they're going to have air conditioning or not.
yeah, when we start looking at things that we have to do at the high school, I mean, okay, so the iPads are becoming obsolete. I mean, I had my laptop for 10 years. And it still worked, it just had a little problems and then the case broke, but it might be something that, yeah, it'd be fantastic to have, but maybe we don't have to have it. I mean, I'm just saying, it's some money issues that we're gonna be coming, if we can save $1 million, how much were those things?
Well, these were 900, so we'll have about 1.8 left, and so we can reallocate those funds if.
But what if we didn't use it for that? How much do we have left?
Well,
I mean, I don't want technology department to hate me, but we have to answer for, I'd rather have what we need at the high school versus an iPad in the kindergartner's hand. I'm just saying.
I think it goes more than just devices being through the the device has a lifespan, and they go between a lot of hands, I mean, get that. I think you're right, we have to give it a lot of thought, and we have to say, when we went out to the community and said, this is bond dollars, so here's how we're gonna allocate those bond dollars, if we move from there, we move from there very consciously together, say, because we recognize a different need, we can't do the capital improvements we wanted to do without using these funds. Part of those funds are for technology infrastructure, not just devices.
Right.
Okay.
We gave $500,000 to get the technology server room and all that
Right.
built because we couldn't get it underneath the capital pricing when it went out on the street. And so, yeah, we can bring, but what we have to do is bring you real dollars on paper and show what's remaining. This purchase today is not a purchase because we recognize that some devices are wrong. This is a purchase we were making in August of every year because we only have a certain amount of time to expend the funds. So what we tried to do in the beginning is to expend them incrementally so that we get more life down the road.
Right.
And you're right, every district is doing this because it's the only way to get near close to one-to-one device with students. And we do understand the importance of technology and 83, you guys know, percent of our students are free or reduced lunch. Some of them don't have all these devices.
Some of them don't, but a lot more than we think they do.
A lot more do. You're right.
And then even some kids that don't get free lunch. I mean, my boys didn't have iPads going to school, unless I guess they had them at the school, but they didn't, we didn't buy them a $600 iPad because they were doing fine without the iPad.
And my point really is that we shouldn't do this casually and just say, let's just go spend this money. We really ought to think about what is the right way to do this. And I know you're doing that, but
So are we
it bothers
approving
me.
this today or what?
No, yeah.
Did we already buy them?
No.
Okay, I'm just asking. Sometimes we buy things and then we order them and then.
We never do that. You know we
We
don't.
haven't approved it, I thought we did.
Brandon wants to go outside and open the box. Not ordered though.
No, they haven't been ordered, I haven't made the budget code yet.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't even,
I want to make a comment, devil's advocate, but also because I believe this technology, our kids, that's the future. We're a bit older generation. We make do without it because we weren't raised with it. You know, our kids, and you're right, Dr. Byram, they have access at least to smartphones, which is a computer, right? But we have to role model technology and teach them how to use the technology, because they're hitting a workforce where that's all they're going to encounter. If they don't practice here with us, they're gonna be really behind when they hit the workforce.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff to look at, like are we buying right now one per kid? Or maybe look at buying one per 3, 5 kids? You know, I mean, there's other ways of.
Well, and how bad is our current inventory? I mean,
That's
these
just,
things lifespans is 2 to 3 years.
I want to
They
say,
told me it happened.
I want to say that I had a conversation with Miss Doty, and she was very, very enlightening, very intuitive, very aware. She knows what's going on out there, and she was talking to me about obsolescence and what's working and what isn't, and how they test product. You know, they'll get a few in, they try them out, and then they make decisions. So I felt really confident.
Normally, yeah.
okay.
I just want to say, normally that would just be like a no-brainer. And probably anything that was left on the agenda is going to be questioned at this point because of the brick we got hit with a while ago. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not picking on technology, Jody. I'm just saying, when you get told something like we just got told 5 minutes ago, it's hard for us to say, oh, spend $1 million here. That's okay. So are we going to vote on it or what?
Yeah.
Ask the most interesting person in the room. Most interesting person in the room.
What,
Right now, he doesn't feel that way.
I know.
Can we?
They'll see him on TV more. The most interesting
Man in the
man.
world.
The most interesting.
Okay, the recommendation from staff is that the board approve purchase of Chromebooks from CDW-G and the iPads from Apple at the cost of $909,383 of bond funds. Is there a motion on the floor?
I move.
We have a motion, is there a second? We have a motion and a second, any further discussion?
I third.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
We have one abstention, all against, same sign.
I'll abstain also on that one.
We have 2 abstentions.
4 to 2. Oh my God.
We have 3 yeas, 2 abstentions. Because there's a recommendation from the staff, I'm gonna vote A, so that's 4-2. 4 yeas, no nays, 2 abstentions. Recommendation and motion passes. Okay, Lloyd, one more item.
That was.
Mike,
What we
you
have.
read it?
You know, the mariachi group will be performing in Denver, Colorado at
Oh, yeah.
the School Board Association.
Yay.
So, if you have not spoken to Ms. Britton or myself or Ms. Mona about the return flight, there's one that leaves at 3:35, which allows, that returns back at 10 p.m. or around 10 p.m. allows us to make sure that we definitely don't have to do that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Flores will do a presentation at the next update of how many students will be going, how many chaperones. I believe those students will be going a few days before the event to actually partake in some of the other activities going.
To keep an eye on them. Colorado.
We responded to the email you sent a long time ago. Do we still have to talk to Annie?
No, if you don't mind, I'm just going to
Yeah,
say this is
just do that. Okay. All right.
What did you ask him, Mike?
If we didn't get affected, then.
What did you ask him?
Remember you sent us that email about returning late? And
Yeah.
I just said yes, so I don't have to talk to
Okay.
Annie.
I already did, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sylvester?
Okay. Anything else? Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
PTA Council, Resnick Middle School. We're going to tour the school. Yeah.
Meeting closed 1:40.